Welcome to another deep dive. We've got some listener questions about something called a natural law trust.
Yeah, those are pretty interesting.
Definitely intriguing.
Yeah.
Our source this time is an ebook called The Natural Law Trust, written by someone called the Benefactor. So today we're going to try to figure out exactly what these trusts are all about,
Yeah.
why they seem to be so popular with the ultra-wealthy,
Right.
and how they seem to just navigate different legal systems so easily.
Sounds good.
We'll even touch on that story about a Texas billionaire whose only listed possessions when he died were a pickup truck and like $5,000.
Yeah.
All right, so first things first, what exactly is a natural law trust?
Well, it's a type of trust that's based on a private contract,
Okay.
but it functions outside the typical bounds of statutory law.
So it's not really tied to any particular country or state.
Exactly. It's international by default.
So no one country can really claim jurisdiction over it.
That's right. And that's where it gets even more interesting because it actually blends principles from various legal systems.
Like what?
We're talking kingdom law, canon law, the Uniform Commercial Code,
Okay.
and even the concept of natural law.
Hold on, natural law, that sounds kind of philosophical. What are we talking about here?
Well, natural law basically boils down to the idea of cause and effect.
Like karma.
Yeah, exactly, like karma.
Wow.
On a legal level, though, it's about individual sovereignty
Okay.
and the freedom to enter into contracts without government interference.
So these trusts aren't just legal documents, they're almost like philosophical statements.
In a way, yes.
And that ties back to why they're so attractive to the wealthy, right?
Exactly.
You mentioned that story about the Texas billionaire and a pickup truck.
Oh, yeah, one of the Hunt brothers.
Right.
When he passed away, his only listed possessions were a pickup truck and a few $1,000s.
Right, but he was a billionaire.
Yeah, the bulk of his wealth was transferred through his natural law trust.
So just like bypassed all the usual legal hoops?
Exactly. No probate, no delays, just an instant inheritance for the heir.
Wow. So these trusts can save families a ton of money in legal fees and years of court battles.
Potentially, yeah.
You also mentioned the Rockefellers. Are they using these trusts too?
It's widely believed that they utilize a whole network of them.
Really? How many are we talking?
Potentially thousands?
Thousands of trusts. So besides avoiding probate, what's the big appeal? Why all of the secrecy?
Well, asset protection is a huge factor.
Okay, how so?
These trusts are structured in a way that shields assets from things like lawsuits, creditors, even government seizure in some cases.
It's like building a financial fortress around your wealth.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are potential tax advantages as well.
Let's talk about that. The ebook mentions these trusts being considered non-taxable entities.
Right.
How does that work? I'm already imagining the IRS getting a little suspicious.
Well, it's not about evading taxes. It's more about the structure of the trust.
Oh, okay.
They're seen as pass-through vehicles.
Meaning?
The income generated by the trust eventually flows through to the beneficiaries. And then they're the ones who are responsible for paying taxes on that income.
Okay, so the trust itself doesn't pay taxes, but the individuals do. It's like a relay race for the tax burden.
That's a good way to put it. And here's something really interesting. The ebook actually quotes the IRS.
Oh, really? What do they say?
They say that if no information or return is filed, the Internal Revenue Service cannot assess you.
So basically they're saying that natural law trusts often don't have any filing requirements with the IRS.
Oh, that's right.
Wait a minute. No filing requirements. No tax returns. How is that even possible?
Because remember, these trusts exist outside of those traditional legal frameworks that the IRS usually deals with.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about things like EINs, those tax ID numbers? Don't trusts need those for banking and stuff?
Yes, they often do. But with natural law trusts, EINs are mainly used for banking purposes.
Okay, not for tax reporting.
Right.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly secretive, legally complex, and potentially tax-advantaged structure.
Yeah.
I think it's starting to make sense. But how do you actually manage a natural law trust? It sounds incredibly complicated.
It can be, which is why understanding the structure is crucial. There are several key roles within the trust.
Like what?
You have the creator, the trustee, the beneficiary, the protector, and the manager.
Okay, so it's like a well-oiled machine with specific roles for each part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the ebook goes into detail about the potential benefits and challenges of individuals occupying multiple roles within the trust.
Right. I can imagine that could get a little tricky. What about choosing the right people for these roles? That seems like a pretty crucial decision.
Absolutely. Selecting trustworthy and compatible individuals, especially for roles like trustee and protector, is paramount.
Yeah, we're talking about people who are responsible for managing potentially vast sums of money.
Exactly.
No pressure. So beyond assembling the A-team, what about the day-to-day operations? How does someone actually use a natural law trust?
Well, think of it like this. Using an NLT for everyday transactions is similar to how you'd handle things personally, just under the trust's name. But there's a fascinating point that ebook raises about the future of NLTs and banking.
What's that?
A potential shift towards a natural law banking system.
Oh, natural law banking system. What does that even mean?
It's a bold prediction, but the ebook suggests that as part of a larger global reset that many believe is already underway,
Okay.
there's going to be a growing acceptance of NLTs by financial institutions.
So we're talking about a potential paradigm shift in the world of finance.
Potentially, yes.
Wow.
And while the ebook acknowledges that some banks might still be hesitant about NLTs,
Right.
Individual bank employees having their own subjective responses,
Sure.
it encourages an open-minded approach to banking with an NLT exploring various institutions, including credit unions and investment firms.
So it's about being persistent, doing your due diligence, and finding the right partners in the financial world.
Exactly. The financial landscape is evolving rapidly, and being informed about alternative approaches like natural law trusts can be truly empowering.
This has definitely been a crash course and a whole new way of thinking about finance and law.
It certainly has. We've only scratched the surface here, but hopefully you now have a better grasp of what natural law trusts are and the potential they hold.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. The question now is, what possibilities do you see for using this knowledge in your own life?
That's a great question to ponder. And for those of you listening who are intrigued and want to delve deeper, which I'm guessing is quite a few of you, we'll be exploring specific aspects of natural law trusts in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
Welcome back. Last time we were talking about natural law trusts, and I want to kind of dig deeper into the legal and philosophical ideas behind them.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique blend of concepts.
It really is. You mentioned earlier something about historical context, like Plato and the Magna Carta.
Right. How do those connect to trusts today?
Well, it's fascinating how these ideas kind of echo through history.
Yeah.
Plato actually used a trust-like structure to establish a university in ancient Greece. And the Magna Carta itself can be seen as a type of trust, granting property rights and limiting the king's power.
So these natural law trusts aren't just some brand new idea
Nope. They're tapping into some pretty ancient principles.
about individual sovereignty and freedom of contract.
Exactly. Ideas that are still very relevant today, especially in the world of finance.
And you also mentioned the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC.
Right.
How does that fit into all of this?
That's a key piece of the puzzle. The UCC governs contracts, including trusts, on a global scale.
So it provides a standardized framework.
Exactly. It helps ensure fairness and transparency in transactions.
So even though a natural law trust operates outside traditional legal systems, it still follows the rules of the UCC.
Yeah, it's a fascinating paradox.
It is. It's like it's operating within a system, but also kind of transcending it at the same time.
Right. It takes these time-tested legal concepts and weaves them together in a way that's both innovative and effective.
It's a lot for my brain to process, but it's starting to make sense.
It's definitely a lot to unpack.
So we've got this blend of history, philosophy, and commerce all coming together in these trusts.
Yeah,
No wonder they're so appealing to people seeking financial freedom and autonomy.
exactly. And speaking of financial freedom,
Yeah.
we touched on how these trusts offer significant asset protection.
Right, let's unpack that a bit further.
Okay, so one of the primary appeals of a natural law trust is its ability to shield assets from potential threats.
Like what kinds of threats?
Things like lawsuits, creditors, and even government seizure in some cases.
It's like having an impenetrable fortress around your wealth.
It's not about being totally immune.
Okay,
It's more about creating layers of legal protection.
gotcha.
A properly structured and managed NLT makes it very difficult for outside parties to access the assets held within the trust.
So it's not foolproof, but it can be a pretty strong shield.
Exactly. It's like any other legal or financial strategy, the details matter, but the potential for asset protection with a natural law trust is definitely there.
Okay, we also talked about avoiding probate. How does a natural law trust do that?
Remember that story about the Hunt brother?
Yeah.
His heir got immediate control of the trust assets when he died. There were no delays or legal hurdles like you often see with probate.
So it ensures a smooth transition of wealth.
Exactly. And it can potentially save families a lot of time and money.
Because probate can drag on for years.
It can. And that's why these trusts are often veiled in secrecy.
Really?
Their existence isn't usually publicized, and the details of their operations are kept confidential.
So it's all very hush-hush.
Very much so. It's
Yeah.
about operating with a level of discretion that's hard to achieve with traditional financial structures.
I can see why that would appeal to people who value their privacy.
Absolutely. And that secrecy adds to the mystery surrounding these trusts.
It does make you wonder what's really going on.
Exactly. What are they capable of?
Well, let's talk about those capabilities. We mentioned the different roles within the trust, the creator, trustee, beneficiary, protector, and manager.
Right.
Can you break down how those roles work in practice?
Sure. So let's say you're the creator of a natural law trust.
Okay.
You're basically the architect of the whole thing. You establish its purpose, define its terms, and appoint the people who will manage it.
So you're creating a legacy that could last for generations.
Yeah. You're laying the foundation for how the trust will operate potentially for decades.
That's a big responsibility.
It is. And that's why having a clear vision and getting expert guidance is so crucial.
What about the trustee? What do they do?
The trustee is the guardian of the trust assets.
Okay.
They have a responsibility to act in the best interests of the beneficiaries.
To manage those assets responsibly.
Exactly. They make the day-to-day decisions about how the trust assets are managed and distributed.
And the beneficiary is the one who ultimately receives the benefits of the trust.
That's right. They could be your children, grandchildren, a charity, whoever you choose.
Okay, what about those other roles you mentioned, the protector and the manager?
Those are optional roles.
Okay.
But they can be really important for making sure the trust runs smoothly. The protector acts as an overseer,
Okay.
making sure the trustee is doing their job properly and not abusing their power.
So it's a system of checks and balances.
Exactly. And the manager can handle the day-to-day operations of the trust.
Things like bookkeeping and record keeping.
Yeah, that frees up the trustee to focus on the bigger picture, like investment strategies.
So it's a pretty intricate system with all these different roles and responsibilities.
It is. And it's all designed to achieve specific goals.
Like asset protection, bypassing probate, and potentially minimizing taxes.
Right. It's like a finely tuned machine.
Each part playing a crucial role.
Exactly. It's about creating a structure that's both legally sound and strategically advantageous.
Well, it's a fascinating approach, and I can definitely see why it's gaining popularity.
Especially among people who are looking for financial freedom and autonomy.
And speaking of freedom and autonomy, let's talk about how these trusts are being used in the real world.
That's a great question, and one we'll explore in depth in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the theory behind these natural law trusts,
We have.
but now I want to get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
How are these things actually being used in the real world?
Well, the ebook gives some pretty fascinating examples.
Like what?
One that stood out to me was using NLTs to hold foreign currencies.
Foreign currencies. Why those specifically?
Well, the ebook mentions this concept called revaluation.
Revaluation.
Yeah, the idea is that certain foreign currencies like the Iraqi dinar or the Vietnamese dong
Okay.
are going to see a massive surge in value at some point.
So it's kind of a speculative play.
It is hoping to capitalize on a potential currency upswing.
Great, but why use a natural law trust for that? Couldn't you just use a regular bank account?
You could, but that's where the advantages of an NLT come in.
Okay.
By holding these currencies within the trust structure,
Uh-huh.
investors are aiming to shield any potential gains from taxes
Ah, I see.
and create a more efficient way to manage them.
So it's about maximizing returns while minimizing liabilities.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. What about using these trusts for something a little more, altruistic?
Sure.
The ebook also mentioned setting up foundations.
Right. NLTs can actually be used as the framework for a foundation
How does that work?
because they operate outside of those traditional legal structures.
Right.
They offer a lot more autonomy and flexibility than you'd get with a conventional charitable organization.
It's like creating your own little philanthropic empire.
Exactly. You have the freedom to define the foundation's purpose, allocate funds, distribute grants, all without being bogged down by regulations.
That's pretty amazing. Are there any downsides to doing it this way?
Well, one potential challenge is that donations to an NLT foundation might not be tax deductible for the donors.
Oh, right. Because it's not a registered 501c3 charity.
Exactly. It's something to consider.
Okay, so maybe not the best option for everyone.
Yeah.
But I imagine for someone who really wants complete control over how their money is used,
Right.
the flexibility of an NLT foundation would be super appealing.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
all about what your priorities are.
Okay, so we've covered foreign currencies and foundations.
Yeah.
What about using these trusts for business?
That's another interesting application. You can actually structure business deals and transactions through the trust.
Really?
Yeah, leveraging its unique legal status and those potential tax advantages.
It sounds complicated.
It can be a bit more intricate, but it's about finding creative ways to optimize your business operations.
And protect your assets.
Exactly.
Okay, so these natural law trusts, they're pretty versatile.
They are. It's like having a Swiss Army knife of financial strategies.
There's a tool for every situation.
That's a great way to put it. And as more people become aware of NLTs, I think we're going to see even more innovative uses for them.
It's a rapidly evolving landscape.
It is.
Well, this has been an incredibly eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have from the vast these trusts are to why they're so popular with the wealthy.
And how they're being used in the real world.
It's a fascinating topic.
It is. But now I have a question for you.
Okay.
What does all of this mean for our listeners?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is pretty simple. Knowledge is power.
Okay.
In a world where things are constantly changing, especially in the financial world, having a grasp of alternative strategies like natural law trusts can be incredibly empowering.
It's like having a secret weapon in your financial arsenal.
Exactly. It's about expanding your options and opening up new possibilities.
Whether you're trying to protect your assets, create a legacy for your family,
Right.
or explore new ways of doing business.
Understanding natural law trusts can give you a real advantage.
Well said. As always, we encourage our listeners to do their own research and seek out expert guidance if they're thinking about using one of these trusts.
Absolutely.
They're powerful tools,
Yeah.
but like any tool, they need to be used responsibly.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It has. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.